Now I'm very excited to welcome for the first time on this podcast, Mr. Joey Vam to the Odds Breakers. You can follow Joey on Twitter at Joey Vam _. Joey, thanks so much for coming on the show, my man. I mean, we're into football season here. It's already college football week 4. How's the season treating you?
It's been very interesting so far. So week 2 was a down week for me. Week 1 I did very well, and then week 3 I absolutely crushed it. As you know, I was all over Missouri last Saturday. I love them in that spot, and then there were just a couple good live betting opportunities. Just really picked off Saturday. I mean, it was great. I'm really looking forward to this Saturday slate of games as well. There's a lot of really good key matchups that'll probably shape the college football playoff picture going forward as well.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I was a little unfortunate last weekend. NFL's been killing it for me, so I'm really happy about that. But college, I'm gonna hopefully turn that frown upside down myself. But that's how it is, man. You gotta kind of balance it. And you're hot in one sport, sometimes you're not. And when you're hot in both sports, everything's gravy. So that's the way it is, man. But yeah, how long have you been capping, man? You seem to be really into the metrics and all the ins and outs of these handicaps and the games, the lines itself, I'm trying to say. And what sports do you do?
So that's an interesting question. I get asked this all the time. As you know, I'm young in this game. I'm 26. So I haven't been really handicapping until I was legally able to gamble at 21. But I've been following sports and advanced data and metrics since I was 12 years old. I mean, as opposed to Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon on the TV in the mornings, I'd have ESPN and Fox Sports 1 always trying to be in the now with what's going on in the sports world. I follow football, basketball, baseball, even a little hockey there. I could find an edge in almost anything. It's just about really going down and doing the nitty-gritty work at the end of the day.
Yeah, I see you get creative too, because in baseball, I saw your tweet earlier. You wanted to take, I forgot the name of the pitcher, over 15 or 16 outs because the bullpen was used last night a lot. That's a crafty little way of looking at things, man.
Yeah, Hunter Green, he had a good matchup here. Minnesota striked out a ton. I'm sure if you follow baseball, you know Hunter Green is a strikeout pitcher. He went 7 shutout innings and had 14 strikeouts, and he went way over that 16 and a half that we needed. But yeah, the Reds really utilized their bullpen the game before. They needed a deep performance for their playoff push that they're currently having. And unfortunately, the bullpen blew that game. But that's why we went with Hunter Green over outs as opposed to taking the Reds money line, obviously, because that bullpen hasn't been stable all year long.
Yeah, you're right. The Reds bullpens have been terrible. You know, I'm having a great baseball year. I'm actually kind of fading out of baseball because football's so important to me on both sides, and I'd like to spend time. I'll do a little bit here and there in baseball and then come back for the playoffs. But I'm guessing you do baseball, college, and NFL. What else you like to do during this winter months?
So my best sport, I definitely say, are college sports, college basketball and college football. I normally kill year round. Well, not year round, but during the fall and winter. And then in the March Madness. That's definitely where I'm at my best. NFL, I do really well in. NBA, I tend to pick off player props here and there and try to find good sides. Totals, I do really good there too. My weak spot definitely would be this time of the year in baseball, believe it or not. I believe it's the hardest time of the year to bet baseball because you have so many people either checking out for the year or you have pitchers with short hooks because they're a game out of the playoff race. So it's very tough to handicap this year, part of the year of baseball. But I pretty much do everything. The only sport I don't touch too much at all is hockey unless I find a really, really strong edge in a certain game.
All right, good. No, good enough. College is my favorite. Probably best at the NFL, but that's just how it is. You know, I wish I would. College was my best, but the past 2 years, NFL passed it. It's just the way, you know, I didn't choose for that to happen, but it did. And baseball was great this year too. UFC is one of my funner sports, but I've been in a little bit of a slump on UFC too. So sometimes it's not your favorite sport that you end up being good at, but that's cool that you're busy all year round. Yeah, hockey. I got hockey guys. Patrick Gates is great here at the Odds Breakers. I follow his picks, so I don't need to put the work into that.
Yep.
So I'm really happy about that. We got Rocco too for NBA and stuff like that. But man, it's fun. And now it's college football time. We're right in the heart, not quite the heart of the season, but right in the beginning of conference play. So now that you saw a little bit of these teams, I have to ask you, man, has your playoff picture changed from the beginning of the year? Do you still like any teams? Are they the same coming into the playoffs as what you thought, or have they changed?
So, I mean, it's changed, definitely. And you look at the top 25, but you got to have Texas in there now after that big win in Alabama. Georgia, obviously, everyone expects them to win out. But everyone's counting out Alabama here, which I think is, interesting because everyone knows if they win out and they somehow beat Georgia in that SEC title game, as a one-loss team, it's going to be hard keeping them out, especially when their only loss will be against Texas. So I would say the favorites would have to be Georgia and Texas, without a doubt. But I think Bama still has some sneaky value here.
All right. What are they numbered at right now?
I think they're 13, I believe they're ranked right now. And I think everyone's selling out on them after what happened in South Florida.
Well, I think they're like 50-1 to win it all or something.
Yeah, they're 50-1 right now, which is
okay.
I think it's a great number considering they were one of the favorites at the beginning of the year. Everyone's counting them out after the Texas loss and then that QB experiment they had last week. I don't know what that was. I was texting you throughout the game. I was like, why isn't Jalen Milroe in this game? He's miles better than the two guys they have in. I don't think those two guys, Ty Simpson and Buckner, belong in the SEC to begin with.
Yeah. No, Milroe, like I suggested he pissed the coach off, and it sounds like maybe he did do that.
Yeah, there was a report that came out later in the week. Milroe apparently didn't take too kindly about having to share snaps with those guys. So I guess Nick Saban put him in the doghouse for a week in a game where I think he expected to be a lot easier than it ended up being. But there was no way Bama was losing that game at the end of the day.
I mean, seeing Bama at 50-1 after the third game of the season is very, very fishy. It's kind of like one of those I almost got to based on Nick Saban. So I get what you're saying there, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not super impressed with LSU. I know they just dumped Mississippi State, but it was their defense that did that. And it's if Milroe. Here's the thing about Bama, and maybe I'll get into this more when we talk about the handicap, but I just feel like they have the stars there to flip the switch at any time and they can just figure it out. So it's very dangerous to count them out in any situation, especially with the way Georgia looks this year too. It's like, Georgia looks like they'll get easily to the SEC championship game and probably even the playoffs if they lose it. But man, it could be Bama taking them out and then we'd be rethinking the whole thing, especially if Ohio State and Michigan have a couple of hiccups with Penn State lurking. So that's
exactly
all kinds of storylines going on. And USC doesn't have that easy in the Pac-12 either. They had Washington and Oregon right there, and Colorado's just a very hypey, sneaky team that has no depth, but they could get hot and beat one of the top
depth,
three.
But they got that guy Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, who I think is phenomenal. They're going to be able to move the ball against anybody at the end of the day.
Yeah, without a doubt.
We'll get into that later, obviously.
We certainly will. Let's get into some games then, my man. And you said it, Alabama. Why don't we start with that? Ole Miss versus Alabama. Alabama's going to be about -7, or they are right now anyway. I don't know how much that line is going to shift. The total that I have is about 56, man. So let's get into it, my friend. Alabama had a terrible showing at USF last week.
Yep.
South Florida. It was a rainy day, though. Rainy, bench quarterback, lots of weird feelings. You thought they would have been a good get-up spot for them after Texas and everything, but that didn't show. But what do you have for this game?
So I actually am going to side with Bama here at the -7. I haven't really been impressed with Ole Miss whatsoever. I think they lose that Tulane game if Pratt is playing in that matchup. That game was a lot closer than the score indicated. I believe they had a pick six that flipped that game script completely for Ole Miss's favor in that game. Otherwise, it was close throughout. I think that they rely on Milroe's legs a little more than they did against Texas. I was surprised to see that Milroe wasn't getting outside the pocket. I think a little bit of that was to do with scheme also. You saw that Texas was playing a QB contain. But I don't believe that Ole Miss is 7 points worse than Bama. I think the spread should be around 10-14, especially in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly weird seeing it go down like that. I know that Alabama, had the hiccups and everything, but this is, like we just said, it's Alabama. And what's funny about this is that the books, for the first time against probably any Ole Miss game, most Alabama games, they're going to need Alabama.
Yep.
The sports books are going to need Alabama to cover this, believe it or not, because I truly believe that Ole Miss is going to be a public dog in this situation. You know what I'm saying? And you never really want to be on the side of a public dog. That doesn't always benefit you in that situation. So, yeah, I mean, Alabama, it's 6.5 here at Betfred, which is a little bit nicer. Even it's like if you can shop that baby around, Alabama Ole Miss at 6.5. That just shows you how much public money is coming in on this game. I thought I had it pulled up too on the NCAA Action Network here. I will look real quick to see how much public is on it. And it is, Ole Miss, 68% of the bets and only 69% of the money. So it's pretty even, the amount of bets and money coming in here. And so the books will need Alabama here. And there's already 9,629 bets here counted on these numbers. So that's definitely interesting here. But going back to, some of my thoughts in this game, it's just like an overreaction. I think the reason with the Milroe thing, I watched him play Middle Tennessee State, and I did lose a bet on that. I thought Bama would purposely be flat. They beat him really bad. Now, it's not like Middle Tennessee State is great, but they're a pretty decent, group of 5 team. It's not like they're, UTEP. It's not like they're Kent State or UMass, none of those names. They're actually halfway decent. And the rain and everything that happened with South Florida is part of the reason I think that this thing came down. But Bama turned it on at the end when they had to, and all the momentum was against them, and they turned it on still. The issue I have with Alabama, if there is one, is that they're susceptible to explosive plays that we saw against Texas. And you saw that a little bit last year against Georgia too. Some of the teams could go over the top from them, but you wonder if that gets fixed. Jackson Dart's a very high rated quarterback, 12.5 yards per attempt. But like you said, they didn't play a lot of great teams yet. And they played without Pratt. They played Tulane, a really good team without Pratt. So I do agree.
They lose that game there. Like I said, I go back and you watch that game. That game was close until that. I believe it was a pick 6 or something happened where they turned over the ball and it was a quick score and it turned it into a 2-possession game. And then all of a sudden, Tulane has to get out of their game plan at that point, and they can't protect that quarterback anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's it was. I watched that game. It was way, like you said earlier, way closer to the end. They went over the top of Tulane too, and kind of got like a deciding touchdown. It wasn't a garbagey touchdown, but it was kind of a deciding factor touchdown. But yeah, that game was close. And Tulane would love to redo that if they can get their quarterback. I'm not going against Nick Saban. This is the most important thing I think this handicap. You do not go against Nick Saban after a bad game. No. After he shows bad, it has just not been beneficial for anybody to do that. And this could be just the time where all of a sudden they beat Ole Miss by 20 to 30 points, and people are like, "Oh, geez, well, we're wrong. We go up against Bama." These yings and yangs of the media and everything you hear all freaking week is just absolutely hilarious. But that's my biggest warning for anybody that wants to sneak on Ole Miss here. I have no lean because my number is 7, but I mean, if you put a gun in my head, I'm taking Alabama.
Exactly, and this goes back to that national title future. If Bama's to beat Ole Miss by 3 touchdowns on Saturday, that number won't be there anymore. That's almost guaranteed at that point. So it goes back. If you still think Bama has a shot at getting in the college football playoff, that number's sitting at plus 5,000 right now. If you could get a plus 5,000 future in the college football playoff, you'll be able to hedge that off against anybody at the end of the day.
We'll relook at that baby later. I'm excited. I'm excited. Hopefully that thing jumps into a later discussion here when Joey Vam said 50-1 on Alabama. That would be a lot of fun. Well, let's move on to an uglier game possibly when you have Iowa versus Penn State. It's just, I think the reason it's ugly is because Iowa's name is in it, really. Because they just ugly up games. The totals just drop like an anchor in the Marina Trench, my friend. It's just not a fun game for offense whenever they are, because they have that good of a defense, But then you think about their defense, and Penn State's laying 14.5 points, but the total is 14.5, man. I mean, this is going to be 3 yards in the cloud of dust, Joey. If you love defense, watch this game. But the injuries to Iowa, and I tweeted some of those to you, Luke Lachey is out, and he's not only their best tight end, but their top pass catcher by far. They don't throw it a lot. They don't throw it really good, but that was McNamara's target. And they lost 2 running backs, 2 of the 3 top running backs for the week as well. Actually, those are 2 top running backs. The third one was actually playing. So you think about Iowa, not only was their offense good before this, but now they lost their three top guys, minus their quarterback, McNamara. Geez, that is just not looking good. Now, Penn State's got elite level of talent, especially on defense. Their offensive line gets a lot of push. So this could be a game where you look at the total, you're like, you got to go the dog at 14.5. But I swear to God, it would not shock me if this is 20-6 at the end of this game, man. 20-6. I am going to lean under 40.5 points in this situation. And the only way it goes over if good old Franklin does what he likes to do and cover those spreads at the end, and you're sitting there at 37 points or something, and garbage happens. So that's possible, but I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty close to taking an under. I'm just gonna sit on it for a while and make my decision Saturday, Joey.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about this one too. The biggest thing I'm worried about is Penn State has some explosiveness on the offense, and if this game does get away from Iowa, this game could get ugly fast. But this goes back to what I talked about. I think Iowa comes out with a very conservative game plan. They don't really try to push the ball downfield. They try to move the chains, get a first down every 3 downs, milk that clock. Classic Iowa, ugly football. That's the only way this game stays close and Iowa has a chance in the first place, especially with missing those pieces on offense. I'm leaning taking Penn State on the spread because I'm having a hard time seeing how Iowa's going to score the ball at all, and that's what I'm worried about here. Is if that game does get away from Iowa, what's going to happen then? That's what I'm worried about.
They don't have the firepower to score, really. It would be my worry is a defensive touchdown or so, because that could happen, and then it just could. Let's just say that happens early, and Iowa's up 7-0. I don't see Iowa scoring again, but they're going to play some really tough D against Penn State, and Penn State's going to have to kind of crawl their way back in the game, and you might get 13-7 by the end of the day, right? It could be 12-7, 4 field goals that beats them.
That's where the game is going to depend on. I believe if Penn State jumps out in front early, that game could get ugly. But if it's a close game, or if Iowa somehow, like you said, gets that defensive touchdown, Iowa's just going to sit on the ball. They're going to put Penn State in a bad field position. They won't care if they got to punt from the 45-yard line every time and pin them at the 10. It doesn't matter because they'll rely on their defense to win them that game. And for sure, I think you and I can agree on that. That's the only way Iowa wins this game. They're not going to win a shootout.
Well, Iowa's got like the best punter in college football too.
Yep.
I think it's Torrey Taylor or something. He's like punting like 50 to 60 chunks of yards. It's just absolutely ridiculous, and he's their best player.
Yes, it was just crazy to say that a punter is the best player. But that kid's going to end up in the NFL just because of his leg and how accurate he is.
Good for him. Hopefully he actually gets drafted too. That'd be fun to see. Well, let's move on to another under-the-radar game. And I picked this for a couple of different reasons. James Madison University versus Utah State. Utah State's about 6.5-point dog. At home, across the country, total is 52.5. I'm gonna let you go first to see if you have anything, but I'll give you my thoughts and angles.
So I'm going to go James Madison, even if on the road. It doesn't matter to me. We watched this Utah State team get ran all over by Air Force. And James Madison has a very strong offensive line, a good run game, and a quarterback that isn't really going to turn over the ball at the end of the day. With that strong defense, I don't see how Utah State keeps this within a touchdown, just based off the fact that James Madison, in my opinion, has a top 40 defense. I mean, we saw the anomaly, we're going to call it, against Virginia earlier this year, where they had to crawl back and win that game. But I believe that showed the tenacity and the heart that this program has, that they were able to come back on the road against Virginia despite not really being a good football team. That was a tough road game to play because it was the first home game after the shooting. So you know that the crowd was there. You know that they were playing for more than just the names on their back at the end of the day. So you saw a spirited effort from that Virginia team. But I really believe James Madison's going to cover this number here. They're very good at the end of the day.
All right. Well, so here's my problem with this spread.
Yeah.
And my problem is my number's 9, not 6.5. So it might eventually keep me off it. But here's the interesting thing that I'm going to have a slight disagreement with you.
Okay.
This number kind of fits a system where the team traveling across the country is playing a non-conference game. And this is even better in college basketball, but
yes,
they're playing a non-conference game. It's almost like Utah State's in the way. And the players are like, God, I don't want to play. I'm going to play against my conference and beat them. I can't even make my Sun Belt championship game because of these stupid rules. I just want to wipe the floor with them. So this is the massive letdown spot after being Troy, and just a terrible annoyance spot for James Madison and Utah State. They did just get run on, but it took a lot of downs for Air Force to do it. But Air Force is just the best running team out of any of the group of 5 teams. So it's like, I can't really fault them that much, but it's just a bad spot for James Madison. And even though my numbers don't line up, it keeps me off of that side and makes me lean more towards the Utah State side. Now, you have to understand that Utah State has had the harder schedule. And to be honest with you, this is very strange too. They have a better yards per play margin so far than James Madison. So they're moving the ball. They're kind of throwing the ball as well. So my worry is that James Madison allows 9.01 so far passing yards per attempt, which is a little bit high for who they played. So, of course I favor the running teams. I always do in college football, even a little bit NFL. But in this situation, I could see the Utah State moving the ball and possibly getting an upset just due to those factors I said, Joey. But not sure if I'm going to get to the window, though, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm not certain about I'm going to get to the window either. But if I had to pick a game here, definitely is James Madison. Just on my side, I believe the run game will play a strong factor here. If you do see Utah State fall behind early, I wouldn't be surprised to see a similar outcome to the Air Force game last week. I just don't think this Utah State team is very good, especially in the trenches. And that James Madison football team has a really good offensive line at the end of the day, so they're going to get push on the front.
Yeah, they should get some push. They're, that's how they kind of won last year as well. And it's just an interesting handicap here, just because of all the situations, and that's why I wanted to talk about this game a little bit. It's like, I don't think anybody's numbers has this at 6.5. I just think the books know how weird of a spot it is, and they're trying to ask for James Madison money. They're like, hey, give me some James Madison money here. That worries me a little bit, my friend. So we'll take a look and see how this one turns out into fruition here. Well, let's move on to another game: Maryland versus Michigan State. Michigan State plus 7.5 the last time I looked. The total is at 52.5. You picked this baby. Now, we had a guest on, Ralph Michaels, that nailed nailed Washington minus 16 on our show last week, and there was no worries about that in the first quarter. No. That thing was gone, baby. What happens this week is my big question, Joey.
Yeah, I actually took Washington first quarter, first half, and for the game. This Michigan State team is a mess. The secondary is putrid. They're going to have a hard time moving the ball, even against this Maryland defense. And I have a hard time seeing them stop Maryland's offense. I've realized how volatile of a quarterback he is, where you could get a few turnovers here or there. But I just don't see how Talia has a hard time throwing the ball over the top on this Michigan State defense. Everyone has had success all year this year so far. It wouldn't be surprising to see Maryland win by at least 2 touchdowns here, even on the road. I don't really like taking road teams, especially in college football, but in this spot, especially with everything that's going on in Michigan State, this team seems like they've already checked out mentally this early in the year.
They're sitting at 7.5 here at Betfred odds, and totals 52.5 and the Betfred sports odds screen. Okay, there's got to be a buy-in point for this team, and I don't know what the hell it is. I want to bet Maryland so bad here, but they were just so embarrassed last week, Michigan State. And Maryland, to be honest with you, I'm not saying they're the same offense as Washington, but they have a similar offense, being that they pass a lot, Mm-hmm. Tagovailoa is good. What I will say about Michigan State is that, as bad as that offense is, it still has a little bit of defense. So I would assume they worked on a few things, but this team has to re-buy in. And that Mel Tucker mess is just, reading the papers on that, man. I'm watching Mel Tucker accuse them back of things and saying they're just trying to get out of the money. The sexual assault allegations are fake and all that, which you're hearing a lot of that stuff in the media lately. It's like, is that what people just go to get people fired? I don't know. I have no idea to say anything on it, but it's just a game that in my normal betting, my style, I hate betting against teams that were so freaking embarrassed, and that's what it is. But man, if you look at my number on this game, it is definitely above 7.5 here, man.
Yeah.
And that's, it's like how far can you downgrade Michigan State here? We might not even be at the bottom yet, Joey. So that's just another situation here. But I think it's interesting, and I'll agree with you to lean lean Maryland for sure on the spot. But it's just not my style to go into this one. But let's talk about a bigger game: Florida State versus Clemson, and this is at +2.5 for Clemson. The total is at 55. My man, this is good. I mean, there's so many great games this week, and we're going to get to them. We're kind of just warming up right now, but you got an angle on this game, so I wanted to hear what you got, Joey.
I love Clemson this spot. I feel like everyone's going to look at how they beat Florida State in Florida last year, and Florida State's going to come in with this game with a chip on their shoulder, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, Jordan Travis is turnover prone. And I think that's going to play a large factor into this game because Dabo's going to have that defense ready to go. Klubnik, he's still young. He's still got some hiccups there at quarterback, but this is still an explosive offense. And we saw, at least in the first half against that LSU game, they are susceptible still to some explosive plays. I think that Boston College game was a little bit of an anomaly. I'm not really using that to handicap this spot. I believe that was one of those weird sandwich spots where they're like, let's kind of just roll over this team because we get to play Clemson next week. I would not be shocked to see Dabo and this Clemson team upset Florida State this weekend. I mean, this is one of my favorite spots on the board. It fits that system that I was talking about with Missouri last week, with ranked teams on the road under a touchdown. This seems like a real nice spot for Clemson to pull an upset and kind of remind college football that, hey, we're still here at the end of the day.
Ranked team on the road laying less than a touchdown is where you look towards the home dog, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the system he's talking about. And I don't know the exact number on it, but I know that is a above 52% system. So very interesting for that one. Man, I can't downplay how bad Clemson looked against Duke and the first half against FAU though. And they looked like shit. It was more Charleston Southern even. That's what it was. Charleston Southern, the first quarter or so. And then, of course, they scored like 60 in the second half, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, I was like, Clemson? I tweeted out some funny meme about it. But Clemson got better. They did. Since the Charleston Southern game, they figured some stuff out, and they put it on FAU. And Clay Kubnik, I expected him to start better this year, but he didn't. But they're sitting here with one loss against Duke. They know that their ropes they're on their back. They're tied up. They're like, we can't allow another loss if we want our playoff chances to still remain alive. They're definitely more desperate right now than Florida State. Florida State kind of escaped the loss. And I have to assume that Florida State did look up towards the next game. And I have to assume that's part of it. In Boston College, I actually lost the team total on Florida State 36 or something. They had 31 points in the third quarter, middle. And I'm like, seriously, this is going to be easy. No, they didn't score another freaking point because their mindset went away. Well, if their mindset's going away that easily, that makes me a little bit worried. Now, FSU is number 3 in explosive plays, but Clemson's defense thrives on stopping explosive plays. So that's how they've always been over the years. And the total is interesting in this game because I think Clemson can score on this defense at home, and I think Florida State could get there. So it's a great spot for Clemson, and I don't want to go against Clemson at home here with Dabo with his back to the wall. But it's 2.5. I think you're going to get 3 if you wait on it. So I think that would be a better situation. And I believe it or not, even with as good as Clemson's defense shows, Florida State's defense is risky, boom, bust. They could either get smoked or get massive sacks and turnovers. So I like the over a little bit. I don't like it. I'm leaning it at 55. We're going to take a look at the weather when it gets a little closer here, but I'm going to lean to the over. And Ryan just popped in and said Michigan State sucks, and I don't disagree with you, Ryan.
Disagree with you
He,
whatsoever.
he says go blue, so you know what side he's on, right?
Yep.
Well, there's blowaway records, Ryan, and
Yes.
we'll be all right. Michigan needs to look a little bit better too. There's a lot of teams that need to look a little bit better.
I
But
haven't really been impressed with anybody really in the top 25. There's a few teams, but like there's a lot of parity this year in college football. So as the season goes on, the college football playoff picture could get a little chaotic, which I'm excited to see how that turns out.
Yeah, and the teams that look good that haven't played anybody, you can say USC, Washington hasn't played anybody. I mean, Michigan State, they're nobody, right? I mean, there's just top teams that haven't played anybody yet. So it's all going to figure itself out soon, baby, and that's what we love about conference play.
Yeah, and you just touched on Clemson's defense limiting explosive plays. That's why I think Jordan Travis's penchant to turn over the ball is going to come into play here, because he could turn around and say, I'm tired of taking the underneath routes here, taking these 5-10 yard plays, and try to shoot one into double coverage into those talented wide receivers that they have. And that's where I can see this game changing, and that's why I like Clemson so much, because they won't allow Florida State to get those big 50, 60-yard chunks that they love to get on offense.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Let's move on to maybe the biggest game of the weekend, Ohio State versus Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is now, I believe, +3. And this total is around 55 as well. Now, I have a play on this one. It's my best bet of the podcast. And so I'll go first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say I am not impressed with Ohio State. And I just they just don't look crisp yet. And I know that they have the athletes that, Georgia has, the type of athletes that Alabama has. And I love Harrison, man. How do you not love, Marvin Harrison Jr.? I think he's going to, I think Hunter, of course, from Colorado is going to have a big case, but I think Marvin Harrison might be the first receiver taken in the draft as well this year. He's, just looking amazing here, but I'm not super impressed with Kyle McCord. 69.7% completion looks fine and everything, but man, they have not played anybody either. Ohio State plays Indiana, only scores 23 points, and that shouldn't be that hard of a game. Youngstown State, they're probably being vanilla on purpose, but they scored 35, and it took them a while to get going here. Western Kentucky, 63-10 is where they kind of padded their stats. But then you have this Notre Dame team with Sam Hartman. Finally, Notre Dame has a quarterback. Finally, it took them forever. But it's almost the perfect pairing this year because Notre Dame has an amazing defense. And if you remember last year, that Ohio State game, everybody thought Ohio State was the best. Well, Notre Dame almost upset them. And that 10-21 final score at home at the Shoe, that did not show you what the real game was. This was more of a 13-10 type of game, in my opinion. But Notre Dame's defense, absolutely got frustrated, but man, I love their secondary, and that's what makes me lean towards them, towards this handicap here. And that's where I kind of started the handicap, was how good those secondary is for this team. Thomas Harper, Xavier Watts, these guys are absolute beasts out there, and that's where they match up against Ohio State. I feel like Notre Dame could have turned it on a couple more times this year. They got lazy a little bit against NC State, and NC State kind of creeped back to within the touchdown. They're like, what are we doing? Let's put it on them again in the third quarter. And then they absolutely did put them on. Now, with my downgrades and upgrades so far, I make this a pick 'em. I am not saying that Ohio State should be laying, 3 points or 4 points here away. I think this is Notre Dame's best quarterback they've had in years. Notre Dame's yards per play is fantastic. Their defense is fantastic. Man, I'm on the Irish, and I took them at 3.5. I think that, if you look around, you can probably still find a 3.5. I'll dive into the odds a little bit more, but this is my best bet for 3 stars is Notre Dame +3.5. What do you have on this, Joey?
So I haven't really picked a side yet, and I can see why you like Notre Dame. But I have some real concerns that Ohio State really just hasn't opened up the playbook for McCord, and that's why this offense hasn't looked as explosive as it has in years past. And that's a big concern for me because these are two very strong defenses. So it's going to come down to the quarterback play at the end of the day, which is why you like Sam Hartman, and I understand that. But I think Marvin Harrison is an X factor here. I'm not sure you can find a corner in the entire country that can stop him from getting 150 yards in a game. Right now, I'm leaning Ohio State. It's not super strong, though, and it's not a spot that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And I might be over on the Notre Dame side come Saturday afternoon. We'll kind of see. I kind of have to see how things play out. I have to look a little deeper. But that's my main concern is that Ohio State really hasn't opened up the playbook for everyone to see yet. And this could be their coming out game for the offense.
But what was the play? What's different about their playbook last year that Notre Dame's not going to be ready for? Because they played each other last year. I mean, did the coach change up his philosophies? Probably not. I mean, Notre Dame saw a lot from Ohio State because Ohio State was fighting for their college playoff chances at that point, wondering if they were going to lose this game to Notre Dame. And when you see how bad Pine is right now at Arizona State, when you see how bad Buckner is right now at Alabama, I'm not even sure if these guys belong in Division I football. And somehow Notre Dame won games with them.
Yes.
What I love about Notre Dame, and you can even call these schedules equal if you really give credit to Indiana and Western Kentucky. Navy and North Carolina State is really the two teams that you're comparing against each other. But at least Notre Dame's defensive passing play success rate's number 3 in the nation due to those corners. Their defensive success rate in general is 11. Hell, their yards per play margin's 4.5. If you want to argue about playbooks, I'm not sure if they opened the playbook yet with Sam Hartman, man. I think that there's a lot more you can see with this team. I expect a very close, grinded out game. But if you're going to give me 3.5 in this game, man, I'm going Irish. And right now, on the Betfred odds, it's at a flat 3. I still would bet the Irish, but I would probably make it a 2-star play and not a 3-star play. But here we are. And you know what? It's good to have a little disagreement, Joey. It's great. Yeah. And it's going to be probably my favorite game to watch. I will be having a few cocktails in the pool watching this with some buddies.
Absolutely. Like I said, I don't feel strongly about this game at all, and I could end up on that Notre Dame side as it gets to kickoff. But I don't know. If I had to make a play on the game right now, it'd be the under. I think 55 is a little too high. I wouldn't be surprised to see it play out a lot like how last year's game played out. That wouldn't be shocking either.
All right. Well, man switched up his philosophies like Socrates. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go, Ryan. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to, and I think we covered the major games that we're going into to recap. I'm taking Notre Dame plus 3.5. You're going to be on Clemson at some point, hopefully looking for a 3, correct? You're going to be on Maryland minus 7.5. And I might be on the under Iowa versus Penn State. I'm not sure about that, but you're going to be on Bama 6.5 or 7. So you might get a 6.5 at Bama. There might be enough public money actually taking that down a little bit. So, I want if you like Alabama, don't take it now. Certainly take it later. Let's jump into another big game. What about Texas versus Baylor? And what's funny about this is Texas didn't look great against Wyoming. You can call it a letdown spot or whatever. Maybe they're getting ready for this Baylor game, but Baylor's got their own problems with quarterback issues and stuff. And this is a sitting at plus 15 home dog at 51.5. Here's my problem. Does Texas shit the bed like they love to do? It's like history repeats itself constantly. And that's why I always been fading Texas in these spots, but this is the best Texas team I've seen. So I'm not really exactly running to the window to do so. I don't even know what side I really lean on it. I was going to break this down a little bit later, but I'm going to take a look at closer, see if you have any thoughts on it.
I won't be running to the window to bet this game, but I have a hard time seeing Baylor move the ball. And that's the issue I have taking a plus 15.5 or plus 15 with Baylor still is I'm not sure they even scored 10 points in this game. I've seen that offense. That offense is not great at all.
Their offense looks terrible, and they don't even have their starting quarterback. He's been beat up, and that's why the total's 51.5. And I didn't even lean to the under here. You got Aranda, that's a a defensive mind. I've seen him be a defense coordinator at Wisconsin. I've seen him at LSU. He's a very good defense coordinator, and he's going to be trying to stop Texas. And Texas doesn't have a ton to prove here. They probably just got to win these games and get out of Dodge. I think like fourth quarter they're up 21 points or 27 points. Maybe it's 28-7, 28-14. That's when they run the ball, and even you can sacrifice another touchdown, 28-14, 28-21. Let's just say that means you're still hitting the under 51.5. So I'm going to give a strong lean to the under of this one, Joey.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that. And the large reason is like you said, the history of Texas, shit in the bed. I could see Texas coming out with a conservative game plan, worried about, hey, let's just, get this win and move forward on trying to get to the college football playoff. And let's just focus on that goal because they got that big game that's probably going to shape the college football picture at the end of the year against Oklahoma. And I'm sure, as much as I hate to say it, they're already focused on just getting to that spot undefeated. I think that's all they're worried about right now. Because if they can win that game, even if they lose the Big 12 championship game, I can see them getting in as a one-loss team if they were to win that Red River Shootout.
Oh, for sure. That they would probably get in.
Yeah.
What else you got? We should probably skip Ohio, Bowling Green. Let's talk about Colorado, Oregon, my man. Colorado,
everyone
Oregon.
wants this to talk about. They've been waiting for it. Personally, I haven't been impressed with Oregon. I think they should have lost that game to Texas Tech. I don't think Colorado's going to have a hard time moving the ball. The issue I have also is I don't think Oregon's going to have a hard time moving the ball either. This could play out a lot like we saw the TCU game in week 1, where we see like 49-42, something crazy like that. That's why I'm leaning towards the over, even at an astronomical 70.5. I don't think that total's high enough. I don't hate taking the 21 with Colorado, but because of how weak that defense is and because Oregon has more playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to lean more towards the over because I don't think either team's going to have a hard time scoring. And if that game goes under, I would be surprised.
So you weren't impressed when Oregon blew away Portland State and Hawaii, huh? Oh, big surprise there.
81-7 against Portland State. Whoa. Come on.
I know. It's almost like Colorado needs to fix that defense after that Colorado State game, but it was just such a exhausting, mentally tough game on them to have to come back and do that. But Colorado State just marched all over them. It's just like you're so scared about this defense that ranks 113th in passing success rate against a team that can pass the ball with Bo Nix, and move the ball at ease. But at the same time, Shedeur Sanders is a baller, man. The kid, what I loved about him, and I said this in the last show I had, he wasn't celebrating when he tied the game and got the 2. He put a towel on his head, went, sat down. He didn't celebrate when they got ahead in overtime. Then Colorado State tied him up, was stupid and go for 2, and then they won it at the end. He's just like this. Look, I'm not celebrating until we win this game. And that's what I loved about that, man. I thought that was just an absolute professional way of doing things. I always hate it when I remember the Raiders mentality. They'd be down 41-7. They get a sack and the guy's just doing all these gravedigger things and stuff. It's like, dude, you're getting your ass kicked and you're celebrating a sack. Get the hell out of here, that loser's mentality. Shedeur Sanders doesn't have that. And they still have some very nice receivers there to throw to, and it's not just Hunter. They have a couple other guys
Horn is really good. Horn.
Yeah, Horn. Yeah, Joe Horn's kid, right?
Horn's kid he's really good. And I think Oregon's going to have a hard time stopping him. And then we haven't really seen Shedeur Sanders use his legs too much, and that's going to play a factor in this game, I think.
I'm waiting for a hook. And then I'm going to be really tempted to take the Colorado side in here. Yeah. And it's so funny how these sharp people, they've been saying for weeks, oh, let's just wait till the Oregon game and pound them. Okay, now it's 21. Now what, buddy?
Now what?
Yeah, it's like, now you're going to take them seriously. Yeah. This is too much. This should be about, from what we saw, I would have said 14.5, maybe with Hunter. Then I would have said 17 without Hunter. I am not saying 21. I am not there.
No,
But
I can't get there either. I've tried. I've tried to figure it out. And yes, I know Colorado is going to be super public still because Deion Sanders just has that it factor as a coach, and he's turning this Colorado program around. I don't think I care. I don't think I care that the public's going to be on this side here, and you're going to have all that sharp money on Oregon laying 21.5. But that's also why I lean towards the over more, because I don't think either side's going to have a very hard time moving the ball at all. And this could turn into a shootout very quickly.
Oh, without a doubt, very quickly, yeah. And it's oh man, it's just one of those situations where I'm not there, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be there. I really think that this should have been a different game. But here's the good news: this game is going to be, I believe, a later kickoff again. Hell, the other one went to like 2:30 on the East Coast, and still was the most watched football game. It's a 12:30 start here on the Pacific time, so Eastern time is like 3:30.
3:30,
yeah. Okay. Now, okay. Well, that's interesting too. So it gives a little bit less of a home crowd advantage for Oregon when it's a little bit less. Night games are scary as hell, especially when you're like in Happy Valley, right?
Yeah.
In places like that. So that's what we have to say about that. I think it's been overbought or overpushed, over manipulated by the books. Even that sometimes happens
because this number was sitting at 17 last week, and then because of the poor performance, it moved all the way to 21. I just think it's an over exaggeration. If this number was at 14, maybe I'd take Oregon, because I do believe this Oregon football team is a lot better than Colorado. But I just think Deion's going to have these kids ready to play. And that's something that you can't count out. You can't look at the Colorado State game and be like, Colorado State moved the ball too much. This should be a pushover. We talk about letdown spots all the time. They were coming off a big win against Nebraska that nobody thought they were going to win for some reason. Still can't get my head around that. But Colorado is a decent football program. They're going to give some of these top teams, Washington, USC, even Oregon this week, a tough time. I don't think they're going to be pushovers like a lot of people think.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Let's move on to Oregon State versus Washington State. We'll end with this one because I don't think we need to talk about Cal Washington. Let's talk about Oregon State versus Washington State. And this could be the more exciting game if Colorado's getting blown out or any of these teams late. This is probably a later kickoff too. I'll look at and just update the spread to make sure that it's still there here. It's 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock on the East, 4 o'clock Pacific. We're at 3. We're at 3. Washington's a home dog at 3. The total is at 57.5. I think this line's been adjusted a little bit, but I'm gonna give out another play in this. I'm taking Washington State, buddy. I'm taking Washington State, and there's a lot of people that say don't over adjust things. Things happen. What I noticed about Washington State is we heard great things about their spring game and how in sync they look. Well, they look really in sync against Wisconsin. And to be honest with you, are they quite as good as Wisconsin? I don't know. I think if they're on a neutral field and things were different, they might have lost that game maybe by 3 points. But wow, did they put it on some other teams like Colorado State and a few others? And man, that quarterback Ward, is he looking good? He is on fire. They have a 27-year-old offensive coordinator over at Washington State. Now, Oregon State had a pretty easy schedule so far. They do have a better defense, certainly, better than before. But I don't like DJ Uiagalelei that much. I don't. There's reasons that he struggled at Clemson. He transferred across the nation, and right now he looks like a stud. But he had a bad game against finally when he plays a good defense. And I'll tell you right now, Washington State's defense also looks pretty good, man. They are stopping teams. They put it on Wisconsin, and Wisconsin lost the first half to them. They were starting to win the second half, but Washington State with that home crowd, eventually pulled that away. And I thought that was very mature of them. But this defense is only allowing 3.56 yards per rush. They're stopping the run here, and they just demolished Northern Colorado on offense, 7 yards per play, allowing 5.62 yards per play, a nice 1.4 margin there. While Oregon State, they played 2 Mountain West teams, and San Diego State did not cover last week. And that game was a little closer than this 26-9. It was kind of a muddy game. And then San Jose State team does not have any defense whatsoever. So, they have a nice yards per play margin of, more like 2.5. But it's a situation where I take the home dog with the 3 points with these teams that kind of know each other from last year. This was a great game when they played last year with the same coaches as well. And I'm pulling that up right now. I believe that Washington State kind of kept up with them. Can't remember the score here. I can't even.
I think it was like 30-26. I think it was close last year. I'd have to double check though. Could be completely off, but I remember that game being close.
It was 24-10, but it wasn't that close. It was a lot closer at the beginning. Okay. I'm taking Washington State here. Just my power ratings have this more as a pick 'em, and I'm going to stick with that. I just love the fact that, I love what they're doing on offense here. They're running the ball really well. You have Dylan Payne, 8.6 yards per rush. He's doing really good, and he's only like their third guy. Cameron Ward is running it really well himself, and he hasn't really shown what he can do on the run as well. Ward is a ridiculous 72% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns. He hasn't even turned the ball over yet. 0. They're at home. I'll take the 3.
I'm with you here, and you pretty much covered all my notes. I think this game's going to come down to if they turn DJ into a pocket passer and take away Oregon State's run game, DJ is going to turn over the ball, and that's going to flip the script of this entire game completely.
Right.
I'm siding with the better quarterback here. I think Cameron Ward is miles better than DJ Ugulavi. However you pronounce his name, I definitely butchered that. But, I have a hard time not taking Wazoo. I'm definitely going to take the 3, and I may even sprinkle a little bit of the money line there because I'm very confident in them coming through with this game.
Yeah, and Oregon State is a rushing team. Don't get me wrong. And that's going to be, if that doesn't work, that's where they get in trouble. And now they're finally playing a defense that has done well against the rush, 3.5 yards per rush. And last year, where they weren't even that bad at 4 yards per rush. It's not like they're terrible, but they were just kind of getting their feet wet last year. And they're a more mature team now. And they have the same quarterback last year. Oregon State got the new guy. So, I think there's going to be some revenge on the minds of Washington State. Well, Joey, my man, we are out of time. Really appreciate you coming down and breaking down a few of these games. It's going to be one hell of a weekend, my man. Where could our listeners and viewers get your great information and plays?
So my hashtag for Twitter or X, whatever you like to call it, is right there at Joey Vam _. I have a chalkboard group with a little over 500 people in there right now. We have a bunch of smart people in there. My buddy Max and Brad. We break down the games for all the people in there, and we just have good conversation and sweat out the bets together. I definitely welcome everyone to come, even you. I would love to have you in there, Kiev, if you want to pop your head in there. The link's right on my Twitter for the chalkboard. But overall, all my content will be found on Twitter. I hope we can have more conversations like this in the future, Kiev, and thank you for having me on.
All right, well, I will definitely check that link out, man. I'll jump on in and join in the conversation. Really appreciate you having you. Make sure you guys follow Joey at Joey Vam _.